Hello there. Welcome to part 3 in the history of evolution. Today we will begin with discussing the 3 types of gods. There are basically 3 types of religions in the world. The first type is atheism, which says there is no God. Psalm 14:1 calls the people who believe there is no God fools. The second type of religion is pantheistic, which says that nature is God. This group says that the universe is in control of itself and knows what it wants to accomplish. Pantheism imparts a divine nature to the elements. The third type of religion says that God is outside of, above, and beyond his creation. He is not limited by his creation in any way. This is the almighty and infinite God of the Bible. Socrates was a pantheist Greek philosopher who lived from 469 to 399 BC. Socrates did not leave many writings, but his student Plato wrote prolifically. Plato, like his teacher Socrates, was definitely a pantheist. He also believed that nature is God. Munitz, from his book Theories of the Universe, page 61, says, Plato also makes use of another analogical pattern of thought in describing the universe as an all-inclusive living creature, one whose body is perfectly spherical and whose soul animates the whole world. In addition to this world soul, the various individual heavenly bodies are regarded by Plato as divine beings. In the writings of Plato, we have a very definite description of the chain of being, or an order of this world soul. He taught that the universe is a living creature in itself. Plato's idea was not one of ascension in evolution, but one of descending. He thought that it went from God to man and on down to the atomic particles. His idea of putting everything in a nice, neat order came from Socrates. Plato developed this further into the great chain of being. Democritus lived from 460 to 362 BC. He started a school called the Atomist School. Democritus coined the word atom. He thought the interplay of atomic particles was all that was necessary to describe how the universe got here. The same basic ideas is taught in modern evolution. We next come to a student of Plato named Aristotle. He lived from 384 to 322 BC. Aristotle developed the scale of being. He believed in reincarnation, which teaches that after death you would return to earth as a new being, either higher or lower depending on how well you behaved during your present life. This is very similar to the idea of modern-day Eastern religions. He developed the idea of a world soul more fully and passed it on to many more of his students. Aristotle believed in a descending order of nature. He believed in the eternal cosmos, which says that nature has always existed. He believed in spontaneous generation, which says that life arose from non-life. Aristotle is known for many scientific discoveries and no doubt had a great positive impact on the world of science. However, his God was not the God of the Bible. His God was nature. Aristotle was tutor to a man named Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was a leader of the Greek Empire in the 3rd century BC. He spread the teaching of Aristotle all around his empire. These men are all part of the Western branch of evolutionary doctrine. The Eastern branch was also developing during this same time. People had traveled from the Tower of Babel to the eastern countries of India, Pakistan, and China. Civilizations began developing there. Beginning around 500 BC, there were at least 5 major religions that were developing in the East. The story gets a little confusing as we try to trace the history of evolution. Here in the Eastern branch, we again have 2 basic philosophies of religion. One philosophy is atheistic, saying that there is no God at all. The other philosophy, again, was pantheistic, saying that nature is God. Hinduism became very popular around 600 BC. It probably began many years before that. This religion is broken up into 4 branches. Vedanta is the most popular branch. It teaches that the universe is a living soul. Sikhism is another branch that began around 1500 AD. Jainism is a branch of Hinduism that says there is no God at all. Jainism teaches the doctrine of karma. This is a system of reincarnation where people are constantly being born back as different creatures depending on how they lived in this world. The final stage of this reincarnation is nirvana, which is annihilation, and you finally get to stop coming back. You just cease to exist. The 4th branch is called Sankhya, which is also atheistic. Another religion developing in the Eastern world during this time was Confucianism. Confucius lived from 551 to 479 BC. He very strongly endorsed ancestor worship. There was no God or afterlife in the system developed by Confucius. It was simply a system of ethical, political, and pragmatic teachings. It was a very atheistic religion that totally left God Zoroaster was the religion of the Persians that developed around 600 BC. Darius and Cyrus, who were both mentioned in the Bible, were followers of Zoroaster. It is quite possible that the wise men who came to Bethlehem were of this cult. There is no way to prove this for certain. This religion believed that Satan and God were equally powerful, thereby limiting God. This shows they did not have the right view of God in their theology. This Eastern religion is still prominent today. The Buddhist religion was also developed during this time in the East. Buddha lived from 563 to 480 BC. Buddha means the Enlightened One. This religion originated in India and was later expelled from that country. It later became very popular in China. Eventually it merged with the teachings of Confucius and became a sort of hodgepodge religion. It was a very atheistic religion. It had a very rigid system of karma, which was a cause-effect system. By that I mean he believed that your deeds in each incarnation, as they would call it, were reflected in the next reincarnation. There is no mention of Buddhism in the original creation. The fifth major Eastern religion that began in that time period was Taoism, founded by Lao Tzu. He lived from 604 to 517 BC. This religion was a rival of Confucianism in China. Quote, Taoism was also an evolutionary religion built around the concept of the way, as cited in The Long War Against God, page 221. It was basically pantheistic in philosophy. Taoism teaches that nature is bipolar. All of nature is divided into yin and yang. Yin is represented by water on the one end, and yang is represented by fire at the other end. The five major Eastern religions that developed during this time were Hinduism, Confucianism, Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. Because of the atheistic and pantheistic philosophies of these religions, and the lack of importance on God, the entrance of communism to these countries was very simple. When the evolutionary doctrine was taught in these countries, the people did not have to change their religion in order to include it. Evolution and communism blended in fine with the Eastern religions. In about 1895, a man named Yen Fu translated Thomas Huxley's book into Chinese. That was probably the turning point in China. It led the way for communism to take over so many of the Oriental countries. At the time of Christ, it was almost universally accepted as scientific fact that the world was infinitely old. When we continue, the two philosophies mentioned above, and onward in the history of evolution.